Hello everyone. For sale today is a Model 4P TRS-80 from Radio Shack. This guy is actually in pretty good shape and it works 100%. It has 128K of RAM too, so it's fully upgraded. This one also has an addition, which I'll get to here in a minute, but I just wanted to show a little bit of it. As you can see, the keys are a little bit yellowed, but the keyboard actually works 100% perfectly. Both of the floppy drives work perfectly as well, and all the contrast knobs and everything work. I'll turn it on here in a second when we get around to the back. There's the lid for it, and it's actually in nice shape, or the bottom for it. The back of it, the handle works okay. There's no problem there, but it is missing the door that covers up the back ports. That's the only thing that seems to really be wrong with this guy. But let me go ahead and boot it up real quick. I've just got a disk here. It's TRS-DOS 6.2. Put it in real quick. You can see it finds floppies here and boots right up. So just put 08, 08. Okay, so I'll just do a directory real quick and show that both of the drives are working just fine. There we go. So anyway, it boots up normally. Everything looks good on it. The reset's working as well. So there is one upgrade that we've done to this, which just makes it really pretty cool. And if you notice up here, I actually have the ROM chip, which is the original system ROM, or one of the original ROM chips. And I've actually modified that with an EEPROM that has some code to boot from this guy right here, which is known as a FRED, or the FreHD. It's an SD-based Tandy hard drive. You basically can take this big old cable right here, plug it into the chassis expansion port here, or the system expansion port, and you can plug it in and boot off of it. So I'm going to go ahead and stop for a minute, and I'll get that hooked up and show you how that works. Alright, so I've got the hard drive emulator hooked up now. As you can see, the cable's a little bit long, but it'll actually plug right into the back. If you notice, the orientation of the red stripe for pin 1 is it's over to the left of the machine facing the front, or to the right facing the back. You need to make sure you get that plugged in the right way, because it is easy to plug that cable in backwards. And also the power supply has a little jumper type connector. Real quick. Maybe you see right here on the board there's 5 volts and 0. I've got a red wire and a black wire on the power supply, so make sure you get that plugged in the proper way. And there's an SD card in here. This is the one I'm actually going to include with this guy. It's just an adapter with a 512 meg SD, micro SD card in there, which is pretty much all you're going to need for something like this anyway. You plug it in, you can see the LED flashes. So now, since this machine has the updated BIOS, it'll actually recognize that this guy's plugged in. There's a ROM file that's stored on the card, and if that file's there, it'll actually load that up, which tells the machine how to boot from the emulator. So let's go ahead and turn it on. And now as it comes up, I'll try to zoom out so you can see both of them. And boom, there it is. FreHD. Also, I meant to mention, you probably hear that clicking. I noticed the second drive, I actually took this machine apart and cleaned it inside and out, but the second drive, even though I lubed it and everything, is still clicking a little bit. It seems to work okay, but it's just clicking, and I'll show you when I do a directory here. But now that this guy's up, we've got 2 different operating systems that I have preloaded on here. You've got CP/M and LS-DOS, and I'll go ahead and load LS-DOS first. And one of the cool things about this card is it actually does have a clock on it built in that it needs for the file system. So it actually uses that to set the time, so the date, which unfortunately I have set to 1916 because these things are not Y2K compliant, but the time I think is off, but you can set it with utility. Actually, it's a little bit off. But anyway, CP/M seems to mess it up when you load that. It changes the time and so forth, and some of the other operating systems do as well. But you can actually go into the utility and set that, and set the real-time clock. And I'll send the link whenever I list this to the guy who built this in Australia. He's actually, I think, not the original designer, but he's the guy who assembles the kits and has all the instructions for them. And there's actually quite a few things you can do with this. You can stick disk images on there, and with utility you can mount them. You can actually mount several types of virtual disks, create blank disks, format them, and everything like you could a regular disk. So let me show you real quick. I'm going to do a directory. Sorry, it's not focusing on that very well. You can see that there's a ton of files on here. And that's all on the hard drive. So it's drive 3, and now drive 4 is actually the floppy, the first floppy, and drive 5 is the second. You can hear it clicking again. But let me go ahead and do that one more time, and you can see everything that's scrolling through. And that's drive 0. There's drive 1. Drive 2, drive 3, and drive 4, like I said, is the first floppy, and drive 5 is the second. And I opened the door on the second one and the clicking stops. It's just that one making the noise. But alright, so let me do a directory one more time, and I'll show this guy when it's running. You'll see that it's accessing it. I've got directory on there. I'm gonna hit enter. Hit spacebar to get through it. And it's still showing drive 1, it's already cached it there. And there's drive 2, drive 3, drive 4, and now it's back to the floppy. And it's done. So, anyway, there's a ton of things you can actually do with this emulator, and if you go through the website and take a look, it's pretty neat what you can do with it and how many different utilities you can run. These operating systems that I have here were made by a guy, and I can't remember what it is. I'll see if I can find that and post it in the listing. He pre-made these, but essentially you can go in with disk utilities and create a blank hard drive image, and it'll just create it right on the SD card like it's a new hard drive. And there's some utilities that come with the drive that they're actually on the hard drive here. That will let you do some various things as well. Like I said, set the time and date on the clock. You can also go in and check the version of the firmware. You can update the firmware on the microcontroller that's on the board. And this board is actually just a kit that I bought. I bought the parts myself and bought the PCB from a guy in Australia and put this together. He usually sells these kits actually on eBay right now. He has an optional Max 232 chip on here, which gives you a serial port. That serial port actually doesn't do anything right now, so I think he leaves it off of most of his kits. But I went ahead and put that on there because he says in the notes that you could essentially use a high-speed port later, but someone's going to have to write a driver for it, and right now that doesn't exist, but should one ever exist, you've got it here and ready to go. There's also a programming header on there if you want to program the PIC microcontroller externally, or you can take it off and program it, or program it through the software. And I think the rest of it's pretty straightforward. It's just enough of the circuitry to, there's a real-time clock and then the battery for it. And the rest of it's just all the voltage dividers and so forth for the SD card. So it's a pretty straightforward board. But it is very powerful and very flexible and does quite a bit. It's going to come like this. It doesn't have a box. I just put some standoffs on it for legs. And I modified a power supply to plug in. And like I said, be really careful when you're plugging it in. You want to make sure you get the power correct and the pin out correct on this. As you can see, pin 1 is right here for the ribbon cable, but pin 1 for the power is actually on this side as well. So you need to make sure to get those guys plugged in correctly. And likewise, like I said, on the back of the machine, you want to make sure you get the pin facing the right of the machine towards the back, or the left facing the front. That cable could go in upside down. There's no key on it. This is not the original Tandy hard drive cable. It's another one that I found on eBay that just happens to work for this. It's a little long, but you could do quite a few things. I'm working on a Tandy Model 3 right now that's going to have one of these cards included with it as well. And also I have a Tandy Model 4 that I'm keeping that I have a working card on, which is pretty cool. And I put that one internal. I had a bad floppy drive in there, so I actually took the floppy drive out and mounted the board inside the second drive on the Model 4. So you could potentially do that too. Since this drive's clicking, you may take it out. You could fish the ribbon cable around the inside of the machine and mount this board somehow in this slot and keep it all self-contained. But I went ahead and left it apart right now just to make sure you had the flexibility if you wanted it. You probably won't use the floppies much when you have this guy up and running, but they're both working. Like I said, that one is clicking, but it is working okay. And this chip right here is actually the original ROM chip which I'll include with it as well. The ROM chip that was in there was replaced with an EEPROM that I made, which has the updated code to tell it how to boot off of this card right here. So one more thing I wanted to show you is that this machine does have 128K of RAM. I'm going to reboot it right now into CP/M. And from what I've read, the only thing that actually uses the 64K is CP/M. As you can see right there, it says memory drive M enabled. And if you go to drive M, oops. Where's it? There we go. Good Lord. Where's the colon? Sorry, I'm not a big Tandy guy. So there's no file there. I forget how to do it. But anyway, drive M is actually the RAM drive that's using the extra 64K of memory in there. So that's why it's even showing up. Otherwise, you wouldn't have drive M. So it's a 64K RAM drive. I don't remember how to show the free space on here in CP/M, but basically that's what that is. And that's why there's no files on it. But if you go to drive A, new directory, as you can see on the card here, it's actually loading the files off there. And same with drive B. Oh, man. Drive B, I'll do a directory. You can see that's in the card, and it's actually empty as well. C, I think doesn't exist here. Oh, lordy. Yeah, there is no drive C, but yeah, I think CP/M only supports 2 hard drives, so drive A and drive B. So anyway, yeah, these machines, you might actually want to use the floppy drive on CP/M here. I'm not sure if it's mounted. Like I said, I didn't build these operating systems, and I know that there's various options for mounting physical drives versus virtual drives, and you can mount a certain number of hard drives on there depending on the operating system as well. And this is a Model 4P, which does not have the Model 3 ROM, so there's certain operating systems it won't support. But anything, I think, generally for the Model 4 and, of course, CP/M will work. I think anything that's 80 column, I think it doesn't support any 64 column operating systems like the older Tandys used. So anyway, I think that's about all there is to say about it. This guy's really cool. It's really handy. I know that they're pretty expensive out there on eBay, so I'm going to throw it in as a bundle here. It's a little difficult to get these machines apart and get the ROM chip to work, so it's all turnkey and ready to go. I'm not going to throw any floppy disks in with it. I will send the link for the emulator. It'll have the lid, the power supply, the cable, the power supply for the board, of course, and the board, and the SD card that has the operating systems that has LSOS and CP/M installed in there and ready to go. So anyway, if you have any questions, feel free to ask me on eBay. Otherwise, I'll hope you enjoy the machine, and thanks for watching the video.